the mountain early Wednesday morning, the 20th. John Parks, Chief of Operations for Mount Rainier National Park, said if Taylor is unhurt, he could survive a couple more days. This is one of those massive problems faced when something goes wrong in these kinds of wilderness areas. Something had happened to David on the 18th, but it took Carl 2 more days before he was able to get down the mountain to report him. The way Carl explained how David disappeared was quite ominous. He said that as they were ascending the mountain, a whiteout had occurred. A foggy mist and snow quickly descended on the area and practically covered all of the landmarks. He said that the two went far away from one another, about 100 feet, but as they were engulfed by the whiteout, they lost sight of one another. He went on and said that as he made his way towards David, he just couldn't find him. He was calling out to David, but he wasn't hearing a reply. A rescue party spent Wednesday night camped at the 7,500 foot level of the mountain and was scheduled to begin climbing at daybreak. Fabiani told officials that he and David became separated during the whiteout at the 9,500 foot level. Success Cleaver, visibility was lost due to blowing snow. It took 40 hours in stormy weather to climb up the treacherous Cleaver, across 2 glaciers, and descend from the woods to safety on the west side of the mountain. Fabiani told officials that he and David had begun the summit attempt on Friday the 18th, but gave it up on Sunday 17th at the 12,500 foot level because of deep, fresh snow, potential avalanches, and poor visibility. Fabiani told officials that he and David were about 100 feet apart when they became separated. 100 feet is 33 yards, so they were very close together at the time of his disappearance. It's hard to imagine how they might have lost one another in that moment, given their close proximity. You'd also have expected that David would have been able to hear Cal's calls for him, but he never responded. Perhaps David panicked and accidentally fell in that moment where visibility became so bad that they couldn't see each other despite being so close. I'm not sure if it actually makes sense there. Actually, after some further reading, it also seems that Carl reasoned to himself that David must have fallen too.
Looking for tool storage that's both affordable and built-in. Choose the trusted durability of the U.S. General Incorporated. Whether you're looking for complete storage solutions, cabinets,
you missed, goddamn! Motherfucker got behind me.
Customization options, parts,
I get the fuck behind me.
You can build your setup just the way you want. Pick yours up today. See why U.S. Generalist.
It also seems like Carl had reasoned to
Motherfucker
himself
come around here quick.
too. Carl reasoned that David must have fallen Monday as he and Carl were retreating from the long rip of volcanic rock rising from the base of Pyramid Peak. Fabiani looked for David Monday and Tuesday, then struggled back, weak and hungry to get help. He could be up there somewhere. He's resourceful and strong, well equipped with a tent and plenty of food, if only the weather were clear. The area where this took place was searched, but no trace of David could be found, and it was said that there was no evidence found of him falling, though that would presumably be because if he hadn't fallen, he would then have been completely covered by the snow in probably a short amount of time. Hope seemed to drain from the efforts to find him when the searchers themselves became pinned down Mount Rainier due to another whiteout and avalanches that were occurring nearby. The park rangers weren't ready to give up though. Afresh, a one-member rescue team planned to resume the search for a national park ranger missing on the mountain. Park officials said that the new crew, consisting of veteran mountaineers, was dispatched to replace the exhausted team, who had established a base camp at the 9,000 foot level. This raises another point about just how dangerous these areas can be. The searches look absolutely nothing like they do on the ground because you quite literally need experts. Highly trained search teams to be able to search these areas effectively, safely, meaning that the number of searches is always going to be extremely limited in comparison to a normal search effort. You could think that if David had fallen, then Carl would have had a shout or call for help or something like that, but he did. The way it was described was that the lights had become quickly. They were engulfed by the fog and falling snow, which reduced visibility so much that they couldn't see one another 30 yards away. Then made his way towards David, but he couldn't find him. So what happened in this moment? Did David have the same idea and accidentally wandered away in the wrong direction and got lost? I can't imagine that to be the case, because that means he also didn't hear Carl's calls from him, though it was probably very noisy at the time. In the end, though, it wasn't possible to understand exactly what happened, and as far as I can tell, David and his remains were ever found. What do you think happened here? Albania National Park is the destination where Joseph, or rather Joe disappeared on the 8th of July, 1989. A mere 4 days after celebrating Independence Day. Joe was a very intelligent man, was a success-driven person. In his years of life, Joe managed to graduate from Yale University and became an editor of the Village Voice. It appears that he prospered in that job and then went on to work for the New York publisher, New Press. Earlier in life, Joe joined the Voice office and always had a passion for the outdoors. This is a man that absolutely loved nature and being surrounded by it. As Joe got older, he managed to climb the ranks of the Scouts and ended up as an Eagle Scout, which is the highest scouting award to my knowledge. I mention this because Joe was no layman when it comes to hiking and survivalist skills. National parks, rural and wilderness areas are where Joe thrived, and it was an activity that he couldn't get enough of. The day before Joe disappeared, he had made the trip to Seattle to attend Unity 99, which is a national conference for minority journalists. Joe was friendly and great.
I forgot behind me and shit.
Precisely his intention for the day. On the 8th, he planned a trip to Albania National Park alone. He drove the 70 miles southwest to the location, which has been estimated to have taken around 2 hours in car. We can be certain that Joe arrived at the park at 12:29 p.m. as shown on his car park receipts and on his free entrance. From there, his position can be tracked as driving to the Longmire area, where he started his hike to Mildred Point. It's important to clarify here that whatever happened to Joe must have happened fairly quickly, given that he had only planned for a short hike and was dressed for exactly that scenario. He was wearing light clothing and had taken his binoculars as he was an avid bird watcher. Joe never made it back to the conference after this, and his friends were surprised, but they didn't sound the alarm, which in hindsight was a big mistake. 3 days later, when Joe didn't turn up for work, 3 of his friends and his ex-partner began to suspect that something was awry. Together, they made the trip to Mount Rainier National Park in the hopes of following in Joe's footsteps. They were all thinking Joe's outdoor ability, as he might just be out there doing his thing. In my opinion, things become a little bit questionable here, as the group did not file a missing persons report until the 13th. Though the date they arrived in the park is not clear, it could have been the 11th or 12th. However, I would suggest that if Joe didn't turn up for work on the 11th and no one could make contact with him, he should have been reported missing that very day. But I have absolutely no idea why these people, who have now become aware that something might be wrong, waited so long. To me, that information by itself is fishy, though that might be presuming too much, since Joe had travelled to the park by himself, and eyewitnesses can place him there alone. Perhaps to add to suspicions here, which I'd like to come back and edit in, Joe's ex-partner was with him at the conference. It's not clear about the others though. Anyway, after being reported missing on the 13th, Rangers quickly located his car and came to the realization that he must either be lost or had faced some sort of accident. The search began, and the press started to report on Joe's disappearance. Bruce Gallen was a hiker in the park and saw Joe on the day in question. He got in touch with the park service after seeing Joe's picture being shared in the newspapers. He told them that he met Joe around the Ridge Trail and that they were at an altitude of around 4,800 feet at around 2 p.m. The trail was covered in snow, and Joe questioned as to how far the trail went on, and Bruce said that it went on for a little over 10 minutes, but that there was a stone bridge that looked dangerous to cross. Joe said that was fine, and that he'd have to turn back shortly anyway, and the two parted ways, with Brooks coming down off the mountain. This was the last time that anyone would ever come into contact with Joe Wood. At this point, I want to go back in time and look at official press reports near the date of the incident. The Centralia Chronicle took an interest in this case and reported on it twice, once on the 16th and once on the 19th. On the 16th, they stated this: searchers scoured Mount Rainier in vain for Joe Wood last week. A helicopter and 3 teams with search dogs roamed the mountains Thursday looking for Mr. Wood, said the park spokeswoman Maria Gillette. They were not able to find any significant clues, she said. Officials plan to resume the search today. 12 searchers from the Olympic National Park were expected, along with 4 German Shepherd search dogs and 8 to 12 volunteer searchers. Another helicopter has also been placed on standby to assist as well. Gillette said it appears he was not on the main trail, as he was on a trail following other hikers' footprints. She also stated that searchers discovered some footprints that may have belonged to Joe, but that it was hard to indicate the direction of travel or how long they had been there. The article describes an anomaly during the search, where the search dogs seemed to take an interest in an area of downed trees. Searchers did comb through this area thoroughly, but they didn't find any further trace of him. This raises the question: was this just an anomaly, or had Joe actually been to that location? And if so, why couldn't the dogs trace his position after this point? It's also worthy of mention here that the weather did take a turn for the worse 3 days into the search when heavy rain began to fall. On the 14th, the Centralia Chronicle stated this: after 5 fruitless days, the search for a New York locator on Mount Rainier has been suspended. No clues emerged in our searching today, park spokeswoman Maria Gillette said Sunday after meeting with Joe's family and friends. Maria then closed the conversation with Brooks on the potentially dangerous snow bridge. She said that it was a likely possibility that he had tried to cross the bridge, which then could have collapsed and caused him to fall. Joe seemed to indicate that he didn't plan on crossing the bridge when he told Brooks that he was going to turn back shortly anyway. Of course, there is every possibility that he changed his mind or came into contact with an animal or a third party that pushed him in the direction of the bridge. This is all speculation. They knew on the day that Joe would at least be near that area, so why now, days later, be thinking about the bridge? Surely that would have been a great place to start on the 15th. Anyway, that was what the park officials went with, and said that the best bet now was to wait for the snow to finish the process over the next few months. As I can gather, the snow in the area will be able to melt. Even after the snow cleared, Joe, nor any trace of him, or where he went, never turned up. There was absolutely nothing found at all. Searchers said that they didn't know if predation had occurred, as they would have expected to find a clear the day in question that Joe disappeared, the weather was excellent and conditions were clear. Visibility of the day was brilliant. Joe quite literally disappeared without a trace, and as StrangeOutdoors.com points out, it would be completely understandable here if the area was foggy or had been hit with a snowstorm or just weather in general, as it wasn't. One would imagine that he didn't pick up his body would have been discovered in subsequent helicopter and ground searches, especially once the snow cleared. This then raises the question: could there have been any third-party involvement here? Of course, I found no evidence of this. There is no evidence of anything. I was really surprised, as absolutely nothing was found in this instance. Now, just to make things stranger, the newspaper amazingly named the Walla Walla Union Bulletin reported this on the 21st of July, 1999, with the heading, "Number of Lakers missing uranium, highest in years."
I have been using GLP-1 injections through hers. I have lost 30 pounds. Hers has changed my life. I'm proud of myself. See if GLP-1s are right for you. Start today at before hers.com.
News. 3 hikers recently missing Mount Rainier, nearly hidden under the heavy snow that blankets the mountain. This is the highest number of lost people on the mountain in years. The 3 hikers, John Repka, William Tietjen, and now Joe Wood. They are presumed perhaps by friends, family members, and park officials after becoming lost in serious incidents on the mountain since May. Rangers who have been here for many years don't remember ever having a yelling. Park spokeswoman Maria Gillette said the time. The missing men disappeared while hiking lost the boy on the mountain. The park rangers who struck out in their rescue and recovery efforts were very frustrated. Park ranger Nina Stevens said, at this point, let's have a look at the disappearances that's happened on Mount Rainier at the time. Unfortunately, these disappearances didn't get as much attention as Joe's, so less specific details are known, but this is what we have. John Repka was 59 years old at the time, went to Mount Rainier with a climbing team on the 16th of May, 1999. All of his teammates were more than just fans, and from what I can gather, known each other for a very long time and were friends. The group had planned to climb the first mountain, which is the 8,000 meter, 14,400 to the mountain. Things get a little hazy here, but John managed to become separated from the rest of the group, and they worked in a shop on the town. But visibility that day was low. It seems that the group had been hiking together, and at some point during the descent, John became separated accidentally, and no one had realised that it had happened. The group did have radios, so when John made contact with them, he told them that he was lost. This was the first time that they had realised he was missing, and they were at an elevation from 8,000 feet. Reports aren't specific about the actions that the men took at this point. The Centralian Chronicle on the 19th of May, 1999 reported this. However, found that the efforts of the searchers looking for the climber got lost in the snowfield while descending Mount Rainier. Whether the search research to resume today with John Repka was coming down the mountain Sunday when he became separated from his group, said National Park spokeswoman Maria Gillette. On Tuesday the 18th, 33 searchers on one helicopter swept the area between the snowfield at 8,500 feet and Paradise Glacier at 6,400 feet. Going was difficult because of low temperatures, wind, precipitation, and poor visibility, Gillette said. John is an experienced climber who has been to the top of Mount Rainier before, but he was carrying a backpack. We're all familiar now with the Walla Walla Union Bulletin on the 8th of September 1999 that reported this. A body recovered on Mount Rainier is believed to be John Repka, 51, disappeared May 16 after falling behind his climbing team on the coast of Maine. A helicopter pilot who had been involved in the initial search for Repka was flying supplies to Canberra on Tuesday when he spotted clothing Repka was next to a bomb, said Ranger Dave Langley. They unfortunately never mentioned what clothing they had spotted, which would have been interesting to include. That would have also known that he had taken his boots off, which seems to be commonplace in some of these disappearances. 2 rangers were later dispatched to retrieve the body. What's interesting here is that the man that who searched initially had already found the area where the clothing was later discovered. That would indicate that John was now found months later in an area already searched by the initial search and rescue teams. No matter what were the interests he engineered, his body was held on Mount Rainier for 2 years before it was finally discovered. William's body was actually found by complete accident, as at the time, the rangers were trying to find 2 missing climbers who were thought to have gotten themselves in trouble. Thankfully, those climbers were found safe and well. Travelling back in time, though, to the 20th of June 1999, William was 27 years old. He was highly intelligent and was at the beginning of his career as a medical doctor. Quite literally, William had a bright future ahead of him and had all the hallmarks of being a very successful person. On that day, William began his hike to Camp Moore at 10,000 feet. It was overcast, 5 degrees Celsius or 42 degrees Fahrenheit at Dressley. William arrived at the public shelter at 5:15 p.m. and left 15 minutes later to snowboard down the mountain. At the time, it was somewhat foggy, but not so bad to the point that he couldn't see properly. According to all, William was an avid outdoorsman, though was not familiar with this particular mountain, and it was at this time that William disappeared. A search similar to those discussed so far was undertaken, with professional search dog teams, trackers, helicopters, and park rangers scouring the area where William had disappeared, but they found no trace of him at the time. They couldn't locate his tracks, nor find any indications as to where he might have gone. Despite the mild fog, he was expected to make it down safely, and because of his experience, with some amount of ease. When searchers found his body 2 years afterwards, they said that they first found his snowboard and then his snowshoes, followed by other equipment that they didn't specify, and finally, they located the body not too far away. Interestingly, the rangers found William's body beneath the waterfall at the edge of Nisqually Glacier at 5,800 feet. There's no real wonder why he wasn't found at the time of disappearance. I can't imagine anyone thought that William would decide to travel to the waterfall before returning down the mountain. I suppose this begs the question, why did he travel to the waterfall? Was that a complete accident? Did he get lost on his way down? Or perhaps there might have been another reason, but I'm absolutely certain that no one expected to find him in a body of water at the time. It's not clear to me if William had simply fallen and was injured, as it appears that he began to address someone as he was found without his jacket or other equipment. Various press sources seem to be in conflict here. Some state that he was only wearing light clothing at the time, and some indicate that he removed his jacket. But all are in agreement that he abandoned some equipment. I think that the expectation is that if you've fallen a great distance and badly injured yourself, undressing and removing equipment would not be an easy task. It's important to note here, though, that alongside being a highly intelligent individual, he was also a bit of a daredevil to some extent. According to family members, he loved to ride kayaks down raging rivers. He enjoyed climbing 19,000-foot peaks and even survived a heart attack during hiking in Ecuador.
Don't just see a place, experience it. Treatment which
Still there.
local store retro. Restore art and roll with studio store team. Dance experiences now on Airbnb. Already made your travel plans? It's not too late to buy travel insurance. However, earlier is always better. If you wait too long to protect your trip, you may not be able to file a claim for trip cancellation. And for pre-existing medical conditions,
peaks and even survived a heart attack during hiking in Ecuador. This, actually, was a point of confusion and frustration for the family, who said that they could not believe that a casual day of snowboarding proved to be his undoing. Later that year, in early November, a June disappearance occurred. Frank Valencia had planned to hike and climb the 10,000-foot Camp with his two friends, Chris Antonius and Raymond Picali. The three set off from the parking lot at Paradise, and they were pulling their packs on their sleds. Frank said that they reached the point where the terrain became rocky and quite harsh. Chris and Raymond had smaller, well-designed sleds that were easy to stow on their packs, where his was much bigger that required a lot of manhandling. The three came to the conclusion that Frank's sled was slowing them down far too much to be able to reach the snow hut at Camp Worm. The plan changed, and Chris and Raymond went ahead with the intention of fortifying a position then to camp out at Worm. And then Frank, with his slower means of travel, would hopefully make it after the camp had already returned to the same time. This was the last time that anyone would ever see Chris and Raymond. When speaking to the press, Frank told them that he has a general rule when hiking on radio, which he had done many times when going to the summit on previous occasions. He said that he likes to hit 1,000 feet of elevation an hour, but his long, torpedo-like affair of the sled was preventing him from meeting that goal. When the trio were together, his altimeter suggested that they had done around 2/3 of that, and he began to worry about not making it to the shelter in time before it would down. As Frank continued, the terrain became so rocky that he couldn't get his sled any further and was forced to turn back. Frank said, I fear that sometime after I left them, they may have made a fateful, irreversible decision of their own. I regret that I was not with them. If they were in a difficult situation, maybe I could have helped. Frank reported the situation to the Rangers, but we hadn't realised that they were missing at the time. Frank joined the Rangers in the search for Chris and Weird, but all attempts were turning up no results. They had taken levels flying overhead and deployed search teams on the ground, including dog teams. The searchers scoured the area from the car park all the way to campus, and at no point did the dogs find a scent. Nor did the searchers find any improvements or any trace at all of the missing pair. Days into the pressing search, the weather took a turn for the worst, and the mountain was hit with 60-mile-per-hour winds, which drowned the elevators and forced the ground searchers to retreat and reorganize. At the start of this, Frank and the searchers were hopeful because Chris had hiked a capoeira around 100 times in the past, including the route that they had taken this time. Raymond, on the other hand, was an expert rock climber and had been to the summit of Mount Rainier in the past. The weather did get better on the mountain and the search continued. Authorities state that 4 specialised search teams were brought in, though I'm not sure how they differed from the search teams already present. After 11 days of searching, the effort was called off because no clues were presenting themselves as to what had happened to the men. Searchers said that they were all over that area and they couldn't believe that they weren't able to locate the hikers. Unfortunately, that's all of the information that I could find in regards to Chris and Raymond. I did come across an interesting article by the Centralia Chronicle though. On the 3rd of January 2000, they wrote an article with the heading 1999 was a frustrating year for Rainier search teams. They state that a record amount was spent searching for missing hikers and climbers in 1999, but no trace has been found of the missing. Mount Rainier Chief Ranger John Cranbrook said, I cannot remember a year in which I've had so many people I could just couldn't find, and it's a real frustration, and it's very unusual. That year, the park had conducted 17 major search and rescue operations, which cost them almost $250,000, around 5 times as much they would normally spend in a year. John said that rangers, volunteers, and professional searchers were left frustrated time and time again in 1999. He said that they were not able to find so many victims despite intensive and widespread searches. The operations leader for Tacoma Mountain Rescue said that we don't like to go up there, go looking for somebody, and not get some resolution in one way or another. He then goes on to state that many of the searches were hampered by extreme weather conditions that were unexpected during the search. He said that over $50,000 was spent on dog search teams in a single case, but that they didn't provide any clues as to the whereabouts of the missing. It's not clear why 1999 was such a bad year for Mount Rainier in terms of the disappearances, but as mentioned, in terms of cost, it's 5 times worse than the average year. They couldn't find anyone discussing any kind of reason as to why 1999 was worse than usual, which perhaps indicates that they aren't sure. If the weather was particularly bad that year, I would have expected that to be as a possible explanation. One thing is for certain, the fact that the searchers, helicopters, and dog teams couldn't find any of these missing people was becoming highly frustrating to the rangers. In many cases, they expect to reach the conclusion. What was concerning, or perhaps even disturbing to some, was that there was never any trace of them during the time of searching. To finish off here, in a previous video of mine, I said that I'd have a more detailed look at the effectiveness of search dogs as it happens. The Kingston University of London just happened to have conducted such a study, which Dr. Greg Batch, Rosling, and Alex state this. There is widespread and long-standing use of dogs in search and rescue operations, and their effectiveness is well accepted within the SEO community. However, very little published research exists that quantifies the effective dogs in a realistic SEO environment. Their study included 25 experiments with 10 dog handler pairs using randomized target placements, whereby they could then calculate the ratio of success, misses, and false positives. A false positive would be the dog believing that they found the item false or not. Each dog was fitted with a GPS device which recorded their paths and ambient temperature. The researchers also wanted to account for wind strength and humidity to see if they altered the success rate at all. The results of their study showed that there was no identifiable correlation between humidity, temperature, or wind speed and effectiveness. The dogs were 76.4% successful overall, with no effects from the weather conditions. They also had an effectiveness score of 62.9%. Just as a brief explanation, the success rating percentage there obviously indicates the successful finding of the target item, and they found that the dogs were 76.4% successful in finding the items. The 62.9% effectiveness score is considered to be the degree to which the dog is successful in achieving this purpose. So what they found was that in some cases, before the real find was made, the dogs would sometimes report false positives or would become distracted in some instances, but frequently they still make the find eventually. 76.4% of the time, in fact, which is a very high success rate despite the minor blips. Just the high success rate of the dogs makes some of these missing person cases that much more unusual. The answer to that is I'm not completely sure. I would like to see this same study reproduced in mountainous terrain. This study in question was done in the UK in 11 months. In fact, after having a little look at the paper, the researchers also state the same thing. They say, for future studies, we recommend further tests following the same methods in different locations and environmental conditions, and with more groups of dogs to get a fuller, more comprehensive picture of basic search dog effectiveness. It is important to say, though, that 76.4% is very high, and it makes it absolutely clear why humans have been using dogs in a search and rescue capacity for at least the last 400 years, and in alternative environments too. In my mind, I do find it odd that no trace at all was found in these disappearances, despite the extensive search efforts. As always, though, I'd like to hear your thoughts on the matter, so do share.
Fish, goddammit.
4 years old, disappeared on the 2nd of July 1950. With their mother, the pair were spending some time together around the Carbon River area of Mount Rainier National Park. They had been hiking for a while before sitting down to have a picnic together. It's not clear how this occurred, and the articles don't go into very much detail about this. But at some point during this picnic, Marcella was wandered away, and Kay, the mother, couldn't look into their after.
We got 12 minutes
Kay
here.
had said that she wasn't sure what had happened. One moment everything was fine, and the next Marcella was gone. It's not yet clear why Marcella wandered away or how there's not sort of context given. Kay did spend some time calling Marcella's name and looking for her, but when she couldn't find her, she was able to grab the attention of others, and the park rangers were notified. The search for Marcella was started immediately, and bloodhounds were called in right from the get-go. The dogs never found Marcella since, but thankfully she was found safe the following day, around 2 miles from the point of her disappearance. The Carbondale Southern Illinois stated this.
It is time to fly.
Disappearance. The Carbondale Southern Illinois stated this. Forest rangers and soldiers assisted by bloodhounds searched the bear-infested Carbon River area of Mount Rainier National Park today for a 4-year-old girl lost in the rugged wilderness since yesterday afternoon. 50 men with flashlights searched along the swollen, swift-flowing Carbon River all night. And Park Superintendent John Preston said 115 soldiers from 4 members joined the search today. 2 bloodhounds from Centralia were able to pick up the top scent. The area is complicated with deep ravines and thickly populated with wild animals, including bear and cougar. Preston said Preston were very loyal and friendly community found in the more civilized areas of the park. Marcella, who's been lost in Mount Rainier National Park since yesterday afternoon, was found today. The rangers on the scene reported. The rangers said the girl, Marcella Christie, was in good condition with no visible injuries. She was taken to a doctor's office at Buckley for examination. Two men left in Tacoma found her. What's interesting about this is that while the coroner reported that Marcella didn't have any injuries, the Bloomfield Daily Telegraph reported that her legs bore long scratches from crawling through Marcella was found sitting high on the slopes of Mount Rainier, but despite the scratches, she was found in remarkably good condition. There's also some further interesting information. I slept on the train, Marcella explained to her mother. Her mother said that the tunnels had apparently gone through her regular
Coming both ways.
regardless of the disconcerting circumstances. Her dress was backwards, and the laces of her shoes were crossed every which way. Mrs. Risky
Fish.
on 9 a.m. outside Tacoma Brothers volunteered in the search. Jack and Donald Noel spotted her through binoculars and reached her a short time later. It's interesting, and perhaps a bit all at first glance, that her dress was on backwards and her laces of the shoes had been messed up. Overnight, it becomes quite cold on the mountain, even in summertime, with temperatures dropping to around freezing levels. So it's interesting that she would remove her clothes and shoes. I can't imagine that she slept without them, given said temperatures. Occam's razor is usually more intensive, so perhaps, as Kate suggested, she just held up her neck and teeth. It's still interesting, however, that she's found it, and I quote, remarkably good condition without any signs of hypothermia. This is something that can grip young people very quickly.
Anybody would do?
And somehow, Marcella had managed to avoid that despite the removal of clothing. In any case, in the end, I'm just glad that she was found safe and in good condition. That was also the end of the paper trail, so let's explore the next disappearance. 17-year-old Elizabeth Byrolt disappeared on the 13th of September 1948. On that day, she was on a skiing trip with 3 friends on Mount Rainier. As they were ascending the mountain, Elizabeth reportedly became tired and rested for a while at Whitman Glacier, while her friends continued on their ascent. This was around the 8,200 foot level, and she had agreed with the others to wait in place while they came back down to her. However, when her friends returned to Whitman Glacier, Elizabeth was no longer there. What her friends did find, though, was ski tracks leading down the mountain, and as they began to follow them, eventually they petered out and weren't discoverable anymore.
Oh, God.
I'm not sure exactly what that means in terms of the tracks coming to an end, but here is a direct quote. Elizabeth's companions reported ski tracks leading downward, but due to snow surface conditions were unable to follow them. After the tracks became unfoldable, whatever that then looks like, was made at the tracks, while the third looked to get help, and the official search was on. 2 rescue parties of the US Park Rangers plan to continue the search for Elizabeth Byrolt, who was reported lost on the snow-covered slopes of Mount Rainier. Search operations were halted by darkness without trace of the missing woman, who became separated from 2 companions late Sunday. The group of friends said that they planned to spend Saturday night at somewhere. Early Sunday, they started to climb to the top of Little Tacoma Peak, 11,170 feet in height. Besides, became tired and remained to rest at Whitman Glacier while their companions continued their climb. At 6 p.m. Sunday, they returned to the 8,200 foot level where they had left Elizabeth and could not locate her. It's interesting in this instance that they found evidence of Elizabeth's direction of travel, but even the professionally trained searchers couldn't locate her initially. It took me a while to find an update on Elizabeth, and there were many reports after the initial disappearance, but thankfully she was found. Under the heading, Daughter of Navy Captains Found Unharmed, the Montana Standard reported this. Elizabeth was found Tuesday unharmed after 2 days and nights alone on rugged Mount Rainier. Meanwhile, the search was in progress with 2 of their companions who apparently left their campsite in search of her. Park officials said that they weren't worried
Oh
about
shit.
it until got to know that Elizabeth had been found. The authorities stated that she was found about 5 miles away from the point of her disappearance and that she was caught but otherwise in good physical condition. Unfortunately, there were never any statements made by Elizabeth in regards to what happened. It was never made clear why she left in the first place. It's also curious that if she wanted to descend for whatever reason, she didn't go back the way they came up. It's just that makes some sense that she would agree to remain in place and then for unknown reasons she travelled in a completely different direction to which the group had taken and that she was familiar with. Whatever the case may be, at least Elizabeth was found safely.
And the creatine is here to review results. Great. Glad to hear it. Let's talk next steps. I'll coordinate with the team.
When I was 4 years old, I had very bad pneumonia and I was hospitalized for 3 weeks. So when I run, I really think about how lucky I am to be able to do this. I started running in 2017. Now, I started running to keep my daughter company and coach. What started as keeping my daughter company has now
Come here, little
a
baby.
hobby, and I now am running marathons all over the world. I just love running. It's where I feel most grounded and alive.
Some more foot on me, Paris. You Paris good. I love you, want to do
Once you start running,
two one time.
there was a period of time where I wasn't able to travel. My dad had Parkinson's disease for 11 years. I do feel best when I'm able to move, whether that's running, walking. It's the human spirit connection, and I love to share the joy of running with others.
Larry Connors was 2.5 years old when he disappeared from his family home. It's not mentioned in which general area he lived, only that much of the search area was covered by Mount Rainier. In any case, Larry's dad said that he believed that Larry walked over to the wilderness with his neighbour's dog. This dog would later return alone while the search was ongoing. Thankfully, Larry was found alive a day after the search began. The man at home Herald Times reported this. Larry Connors, missing since Sunday afternoon, was found alive today by his father. One of about 400 men who had started a mile-long sweep through the underbrush. The lad was under a bush about 900 feet behind his home. His face was dirty, but otherwise he showed no effects of a night outdoors. The doctor was called to examine him. The child had apparently cut him, fell asleep. Shortly before 10 a.m. today, about 400 men formed a line about a mile long and began to swim through the woods and undergrowth in the back of Connor's home. The father, Wilbert Connor, said he had passed the same bush several times during the hunt, which began shortly before PM yesterday. There was no further reporting of Larry other than this, but it's interesting nonetheless that he was found in an area that had been repeatedly searched. The comments about him show no effects of the night outdoors, and can only assume means that there were no injuries, and other than his dirty face, he was otherwise in great condition. I always find it curious when a person is found in an area already searched, because in this case, it has to be that Larry was always nearby and was able to evade the searches for the entire time. either not hearing or ignoring their calls.
Yeah.
A lot of people seem to find this aspect quite suspicious, and I suppose in some sense always brings up the question, was it Clancy? There have been instances in the past where the person responsible for a disappearance has joined the search efforts. If the heat got too much, I'm sure this could be a potential outcome. Alternatively, though, that as far as I can tell, there's absolutely no evidence at all to suggest that something like that happened to Larry. What goes further, I suppose, points to the idea that Larry was somehow always very close to the searchers, just out of reach. I do understand how some could take issue with that interpretation, though. In the end, we'll never truly have a full picture, just the assumption that he followed the dog into the wilderness and got lost. That about brings us to the end of this, so please do leave your comments on this below. I'd just like to take the time to thank you for watching, and a big thank you to the patrons who've been running around on the screen. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you didn't like it, could you like to keep your thumbs down? I'm just looking for your honest opinion either way. I hope that you have a good day, or evening, depending on when you are. But I'll see you next one. Be safe, guys. Peace.
Hi, Sarah. I think we should give $100 voucher for
Bitch.
We'll give it to someone they feel really get a helping hand. I love $100
Gotcha. See you over there. That's it. Choppy's cool. Choppy's love.
Unlocked.
Look like you, don't it? Don't it?
Texas is known not only for its deserts, swamps, and canyons, but also for a series of mysterious disappearances of people under completely normal circumstances. Experienced travelers and ordinary vacationers disappear in the state's national parks and popular tourist areas. They vanish suddenly and without a trace, sometimes right in front of their friends and loved ones. Despite extensive searches involving rescue teams, dogs, and helicopters, there are still no answers to these mysterious cases. Today, you will hear 3 stories that remain disturbing reminders of how quickly and inexplicably a person can disappear, even in well-known places. Before the video starts, I want to remind you that your support is very important, so don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Sam Harris, a 32-year-old man who loved fishing and hiking, disappeared on a hot June day in 1994 on Lake Caddo. The place itself was considered not only picturesque, but also somewhat mysterious. Lake Caddo is overgrown with cypress trees and surrounded by dense, marshy banks where moss and vines hang from twisted branches. The entire landscape sometimes looks like a scene from a movie about mystical swamps. It was this atmosphere that attracted Sam, who loved secluded spots where he could cast his line in peace, listen to the cries of herons, and forget about the noise of the big city. According to his friends Tom and Nick, who had accompanied Sam to the lake, the whole trip was planned as a short 2-day fishing trip without any thrills. They stopped at a small, dilapidated pier on the western shore of the lake, where an old house, once used for boat rentals, now stood empty. Locals often fished in the area, knowing that you could catch some good perch and catfish there. On that day, around June 12, 1994, the 3 friends set about their usual business early in the morning, setting up their gear, arranging their chairs, and enjoying the silence. The weather was humid, with the sun peeking through storm clouds that promised possible precipitation. Tom recalled that Sam had seemed excited since morning, constantly talking about a spot where he thought the fishing would be good. Nick, a little tired from the road, jokingly waved him off, asking him to give him some time to get settled. By lunchtime, the friends had caught a few small fish, nothing serious, but everyone was still in high spirits. Sam, as usual, was brimming with ideas. Let's move a little further down the shore. There are fewer people there and the fish are more cautious, he suggested. Maybe we can cast our lines under a snag for the evening bite. But his friends were in no hurry to change locations. According to Nick, at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the three of them were sitting on folding chairs at the water's edge, chatting about the latest game of their favorite baseball team. The hot, humid air permeated everything around them. At one point, Sam suddenly said he wanted to fill a bottle with some lake water to wet his bait and rinse his hands. It didn't seem unusual. The water was nearby, just a few feet away. He took off his cap, placed it next to his chair, stood up with his fishing rod in one hand, or, according to another version, he left the rod but took the empty bottle, and walked over to the water. According to recollections, it was literally 15 or 16 feet away. I saw him bend over the water, then look away, Tom said. Maybe I glanced at the float, which had started to bob. Nick claimed that at that very moment he was looking for something in his bag. The point is that both of them lost sight of Sam for a split second. 2 minutes passed.
Touchdown! New customers bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets anyway.
2 minutes passed, and the friends looked around. Sam was gone. At first, they weren't alarmed, deciding that he might have walked a little further along the shore. Walking along the edge of the lake past the low bushes, they didn't find him or even see any traces of him. It all seemed strange. Could Sam have left without warning? They searched the nearest bushes and started calling loudly. 10 minutes later, they were worried. They called Sam, but there was no answer, no splashes. His friends became alarmed and quickly walked to the old pier to see if he had gone there for some equipment, but it was empty. They asked a couple of fishermen nearby who shrugged. We didn't see anyone, just the three of you fishing. Gradually, they realized that Sam had essentially disappeared in a matter of minutes, in clear weather, without a sound or a struggle. Nick ran to the car to get to the nearest village and call the rescue service. By evening, county police officers, local volunteers, and then officers from the hunting and fishing department arrived at the scene. Everyone began searching the coastal thickets, looking under driftwood and in the shallow water. There were no signs of a fallen man, no clothing or traces of a struggle. Tom and Nick swore that Sam had not mentioned anything about wanting to leave the shore, and there was no reason for him to go far. All his belongings, including his wallet, were still in his bag. Hours passed, but the missing man was not found. At 2 in the morning, the active search had to be suspended until morning. Darkness, swamp, and dense trees made the search dangerous. At dawn, new volunteers arrived. Dogs, which were given Sam's shirt to sniff, it was lying in the car as a spare, ran along the shore, at first seeming to pick up a scent, but it broke off just at the water's edge, not far from where he had been standing, leaning over the water. Did that mean Sam had gone into the water and drowned? But then there should have been traces. Not to mention that the body could have floated up, and the lake, though treacherous, was not that deep in the coastal zone. Divers checked this part of the bottom and found nothing but bottom algae and a few old cans. There was no body underwater, which puzzled the rescuers. As the days passed, people searched more and more extensively. After 2 days, volunteers brought in boats with echo sounders to explore deeper parts of the lake, but to no avail. They theorized that Sam might have been attacked by an alligator. Alligators were said to inhabit some parts of Lake Caddo, but there was no evidence to support this. Usually such an attack would leave traces of a struggle, or torn clothing and blood. However, nothing was found. Skeptics were more likely to say maybe he swam away or drowned somewhere else and was carried away by the current, but the current in Lake Caddo is not that strong, and some of the items would have floated to the surface anyway. Nothing was found in the water. In 6 days of fruitless searches, the rescue command began to wind down the active phase. We've tried everything. It looks like the man disappeared in a matter of seconds, and we have no leads on where to go next. Sam's parents, upon learning of the tragedy, rushed from another state and begged for the search to continue. But resources were limited, and day after day, the search yielded no results. In the middle of the following week, on the 7th day after his disappearance, the search operation was officially called off. The police filed a missing person report, and the case was added to the archives. Tom and Nick were squeezed like lemons. They felt guilty for not keeping track of their friend and sincerely did not understand what could have happened. But the most incredible fact emerged a month later, when the story of Sam's disappearance was no longer on the front pages of local newspapers. On a Friday evening, July 15th or 16th, at the same old pier, where no one usually fished because it was dilapidated and dangerous, a woman walking along the shore noticed several items of fishing tackle. Looking closer, she realized that there was a fishing rod, a reel, a set of hooks, and a small box of bait, as if someone had just left them there. Remembering the recent disappearance of the fisherman, the woman called the police. Within an hour, officers arrived at the scene and discovered that the gear belonged to the missing Sam. Tom and Nick identified it by the distinctive markings Sam had made on his reel and bait box. Not only that, but his friends swore that the pier had been searched 7 times by people, including themselves, in the first week after his disappearance. Volunteers literally tapped the boards and looked under the decking, but there were definitely no fishing rods there. How did they suddenly appear in plain sight? They weren't hidden in any shelter, but seemed to have been deliberately placed at the end of the pier so that passers-by could see them. The police conducted another local search, suspecting that someone might have decided to play a cruel joke, or that Sam's body was somewhere nearby, but to no avail. No footprints or new clues were found nearby. The pier itself had been checked several times before, so the theory that the gear had been lying there unnoticed for a month seemed unlikely. However, the official report stated unidentified persons may have moved the missing person's fishing equipment for unknown reasons. The missing man's friends, who were more inclined to believe in the supernatural, decided that this was a case of someone deliberately planting the items to raise more questions. In the end, this did not help find Sam. His body never surfaced, and no one reported seeing him. All traces ended after 7 days of searching and the strange discovery of fishing gear in mid-July. The police officially stated, "We have no reason to believe that his death was violent, but we also have no evidence that he is alive."
Do not use pest sprays in your home until you learn this trick to keep pests away. This genius college student from California is becoming famous across America. He recently shared a strange trick that will radiate through your entire home, instantly banishing all pests overnight. It doesn't require toxic chemicals, natural sprays, or homemade remedies that never work. And it doesn't matter what type of pest you're dealing with. It works for all of them. It quickly sends rodents, roaches, spiders, and other creepy pests running with fear for their life. It's so cheap, easy, and effective that it's taking social media by storm. Scientists are predicting this will be the worst strain of zoonotic pests we've had in years, which is why this trick is quickly becoming America's biggest viral sensation of 2025. Here's how the story began. 18 months ago, Henry Morales and his family just moved into a new house with their 2 cats. On the very first night, his cat brought a dead rat into the living room, but he didn't think much of it at the time. As the days went by, his cat kept bringing more and more rats, ending up with a total of 17. By then, Henry was fed up.
That he is alive. If he had simply drowned, what prevented the water from carrying his body away? Rational commentators point out that someone could have found these items in the bushes without realizing what they were, and simply left them on the pier, hoping that the owner would return. Or someone could have deliberately played a game by planting the evidence. However, if that's the case, why didn't anyone report the find immediately? And how did these items remain so intact after a month of rain and heat? Sam Harris's family moved out of the state a few years after the tragedy, unable to bear the pain of constantly seeing Caddo Lake, where mystery enthusiasts periodically returned. Palo Duro Canyon, located in northwestern Texas, is considered the second largest canyon in the United States, for good reason. In the middle of the summer of 1997, its scorching rock formations, bizarre layers of red sandstone, and endless expanses were bathed in the midday sun. The The canyon's hiking trails attracted travelers with their epic beauty. Among those who decided to take the popular route that July day were 39-year-old Jack Everett and his wife Emily. Their car was parked in the visitor area around 9 a.m. on July 15, 1997, when the heat had not yet taken over, and the air was